with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, August 11th, 2025. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, direct from Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, Gaza, Dr. Tarek Loubani, Canadian emergency room physician. He runs the GILA project, which seeks to provide medical supplies to impoverished locations. Also on the program today, the Trump regime to take over the D.C. police and install the National Guard. First target for Trump's military invasion of D.C., expel or jail the unhoused. Meanwhile, Israel assassinates prominent Gaza journalists as it plans its complete takeover of the entire Strip. U.S. government announces it's going to take a cut of NVIDIA and AMD chip sales to China. Good to know we can expropriate such things. Love the precedent. Australia joins the European contingency prepared to recognize the Palestinian state. Vegas suffering a double-digit Trump slump in tourism.
Oh, yeah.
Trump slump. Get those stickers ready. Oh, we got to get those. Judge denies DOJ bid to unseal Ghislaine Maxwell's grand jury records. Back to the drawing board for the Trumpies. J.D. Vance demanding Republican take more decisive action on gerrymandering. Trump set to meet Putin. Zelensky gets NATO backing to sit at the table. Trump orders the State Department to gut its human rights reports. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us at the beginning of the week. It is
Fun Day Monday. Well, not really.
It's not going to be, no.
Well, maybe this opening segment is a little bit fun because of how ridiculous Trump is acting, because Big Balls got assaulted.
Big Balls got assaulted.
Not so big, huh?
We just finished pre-taping that interview with Dr. Loubani. It is, it's disturbing and upsetting, as it should be. What's going on in Gaza is a horror show. And important that you engage with it, as difficult as it is. And that's our thinking anyways.
We have to bear witness. It's not to be too corny about it, but I think since our tax dollars are funding the genocide, we all have some sort of complicity, even if we're all speaking out. And so I think it's our responsibility as citizens of this, empire to bear witness to this genocide.
Tom Lofink on the IM says, I created Fun Day Monday. Feel free to stop using it. Had we not bought licensing rights,
if you don't use it, you lose it.
you lose it, right?
I hate Mondays it's taken.
Exactly. Don't like Mondays.
It's like superhero IP. Got to reboot it every 5 years or you lose it.
All right, well, let's turn to some good news. And that is some crime statistics from the D.C. metropolitan area. Not unlike what we've seen in major cities across the country and, frankly, minor cities. In fact, I think it's something like The FBI crime statistics report got something like an 86% response rate. So it's not one for one. There is some estimation, but the largest areas in the country reported, and crime is down in just about every single category. Certainly violent crime is down. Murders are down.
Yep.
Rapes are down. It's just down dramatically. In some instances, not just to pre-COVID levels, but levels that we haven't seen since like the 60s.
Yeah. New York, New Orleans, San Francisco, Baltimore, Detroit, LA, all of these cities are basically close to their lowest since either the 60s or the 70s. It's been the lowest, I think, single percentage drop in murder rates ever recorded in the first half of this year.
You might think this is magic because if you listen to the right-wingers and all the people who are carrying water for the right-wing narrative in the run-up to the 2024 election, crime is out of control. Homeless people are out of control. They're ruining all the cities.
Tren de Aragua is taking over apartment complexes.
Yes, and not just one, but secretly many others.
And there's a conspiracy of silence
And
about it.
anybody who says otherwise, and all the data is bunk. And the idea that a once-in-a-lifetime total social upheaval in something in a way that none of us have ever experienced would impact crime is a bizarre theory. Well, in fact, it all turns out that crime is down dramatically. And in D.C., this is way down, 30-year low, and that was at the beginning of the year. 6 months later, do we have one updated tear sheet on this? 2025 year to date. So in January of this year, crime was at a 30-year low. And now, if you look at it, the year-over-year numbers, 12% down 6 months in, 7 months in.
That's homicide.
For homicide.
8 months in for homicide. 50% down for sexual abuse. 20% down assault with a dangerous weapon. Robbery down 28%. Violent crimes down 26%. Again, this is from record lows in 24.
Yep.
The only thing that's gone up is arson, and that went from 3 to 4.
So that's a 33% change.
To
but
be fair, these
literally-
numbers are from the liberal D.C. Metropolitan Police Department.
These guys, raging liberals there. And we all know how police departments try and downplay the amount of crime there because it's not in their interest to make it seem like crime is going up and we need more resources.
They don't want any of those militarized weaponry. They don't want it.
So that's the good news. And here's President Trump to announce that good news. D.C. as safe as it's been in years and years. I mean, oh.
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor,
Bedlam.
and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back.
Pause it for
We're
a second.
taking it-
Wait a second. I thought Liberation Day was back in April with the...
This is Liberation Day for D.C.
Oh, okay.
He said in D.C.
Oh.
But
How many Liberation Days can there be?
this is bad branding. Like, is he losing his fastball?
The one thing he was good at.
That's a lot of Mondays off. in the
Liberation
future,
Day.
though.
Worse
You know,
than Bedlam.
I mean, it occurs to me that, he's been doing this for a long time. He did this at the RNC back in 2016, like reading off of Bane's script from one of the Batman movies. But, this move by right-wingers where they have to present a picture of total darkness to justify their authoritarian measures, increasingly, maybe not even increasingly, it's been there for a long time. Like, I was thinking about this over the weekend. You get the same type of rhetoric in terms of like anti-Semitism. Like everything, anti-Semitism is everywhere. It is what's inspiring the EU after 2 years, nations in Europe to even like do a head fake to a Palestinian state. It's inspiring, lawmakers to say that we shouldn't send weapons to Israel. I mean, it is this, the right-wing authoritarian mind must paint a picture of chaos and darkness and evil forces. Frankly, I've been watching Andor. The Empire did the same thing, like create this notion of total chaos. We need to bring about order. We need to stop the hatred that is boiling there by sending in troops. Go ahead.
From crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back.
Max squalor.
Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough. And they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly. And you people are victims of it, too. You know, you're reporters, and I understand a lot of you tend to be on the liberal side, but you don't want to get mugged and raped and shot and killed. And you all know people and friends of yours that happened. And so you can be anything you want, but you want to have safety in the streets. You want to be able to leave your apartment or your house.
Okay. There it is. I mean, it really is stunning how sort of by the book this is.
It's also as old as Donald Trump's political activism. It's very much echoes how he was talking about executing the Central Park Five, who were also children between the ages of 14 and 16. Big Balls allegedly got beat up by two teenagers, two 15-year-olds. So he sent out Jeanine Pirro out there to talk about how they can't touch teens in the way that they want to, which is a theme in the administration in a variety of different contexts. But she means basically lowering the age in terms of when you can prosecute children as adults. So it's just, this is all like the racist broken windows policing stuff being federalized is being used in the context of immigration in particular.
But the big thing here is the complete fallacy of the predicate for this. The total fallacy. Again, record lows in crime in this city. Even if it was at, I don't know, some type of baseline, completely inappropriate. But record lows. And this is just essentially proof of concept for the administration, for the regime. And the proof of concept is, can we take a place that has record low crime, say that it has bedlam and worse than rape, bedlam, craziness, darkness, bloodshed, and worse, like max bedlam. And can we then use that as justification to send in troops? Now, of course, the dynamic between the federal government and D.C. is unique. But recall, they've sent in troops to California on the predicate that we're protecting federal police workers, essentially. Now they're find another predicate that is based on a lie, even though they have legal authority to do this. This is just like essentially probing around, seeing what kind of reaction we get. Where can we do this? They're going to do this in D.C. And then in a month, 2 months, we're going to see it somewhere else. They're going to wait for a predicate. Maybe it's California wildfires somewhere. Maybe it's some natural disaster. There's looting going on everywhere. We need to send in the National Guard. This is what they're going to do. They're going to keep doing this.
And I think the unseriousness of this alleged crime against Big Balls shows why a united front and not giving up the fascists an inch is so important. Because if they can use some crime like this to justify this kind of action, imagine if something and when something worse does happen.
Exactly. I mean, this is not justified by any individual crime. It's not justified by, again, like even a baseline of crime. But if we make it the most ridiculous thing, it's just, again, pushing this, for lack of a better term, Overton window as to what becomes sort of normalized. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, Big Balls got mugged. Send in the National Guard.
We're already there with immigrants.
Totally.
And the, anecdotal evidence of, oh, here's this horrible thing that happened from a migrant, so now we have to deport everyone.
Here's like 4 guys from Venezuela with guns going into an apartment complex. Yep. We're being invaded by Trenta de Agua. Go ahead.
Until you knock the hell out of them, because it's the only language they understand. But they fought back against law enforcement last night. And they're not going to be fighting back long, because I've instructed them and told them whatever happens, they love to spit in the face of the police. As the police are standing up there in uniform, they're standing and they're screaming at them an inch away from their face. And then they start spitting in their face. And I said, you tell them, you spit and we hit. And they can hit real hard. It's a disgusting thing. I've watched that for years, for 3-4 years. I've watched them.
Oh, I pause it. Oh, I bet you've watched that for 3 or 4 years, because you literally are describing almost action for action, word for word, what happened on January 6th. Yeah. And he pardoned every single one of them. There's a guy at his DOJ who was seen yelling, kill those cops, kill them, get them, kill them, over and over again, as people are literally pounding on these cops. It is, there's not much we can do about this, but it is very important that people maintain sort of an awareness of just how much bullshit this is. And anybody who reinforces this stuff is adding to the problem.
His blanket pardon for the January 6th stuff, he outflanked as many of the people that were advising him, because he also gave clemency to people who were like pedophiles as a part of January 6th.
He also said he's been watching this for years and years, and then he's corrected 3 to 4 years because he forgot he had a term.
Right, exactly. Yeah. This has been going on for 3 to 4 since really, it dropped out and then it was, okay.
Watch them. The police are standing, and they're told, don't do anything under any such, and you can see they want to get at it. And they're standing there, and people are spitting in their face, and they're not allowed to do anything. But now they are allowed to do whatever the hell they want. This dire public safety crisis stems directly from the abject failures of the city's local leadership. The radical left city council adopted no cash bail. By the way,
apparently crime drops dramatically when you have no cash bail.
A lot of things that we've been hearing about for the past 4 years cropping up right now as they make this power grab.
It helped them get into office by creating a fictional America, and now you've basically handed them the tools. All those people like, wait, I was just against trans people in women's sports. Why is it that the entire conservative movement now is against the WNBA and essentially outlawing trans people? I'm so shocked. I was very explicit. I had a very narrow critique that I hammered day after day after day after day. And I was just worried about nobody doing anything about these roving gangs that apparently constituted a drop in crime and actually turned out not to be anything. And now they're just taking anybody who's Venezuelan and sending them to gulags. And all I did was talk about it day after day after day because I really wanted to hit this very subtle point.
I don't know. Maybe I was wrong about Dave Rubin.
I mean, these are chickens coming home to roost. It really is just enraging. All right. We're going to, in a moment, we're going to play this interview that we just did about 20 minutes ago with Dr. Tarek Loubani. He is he's in a Nasser hospital and
called us from Gaza.
Emma had spoken to him a year ago, and he's been in Gaza for the past 3 months. He had been in Gaza a year ago.
He had previously done work there. He was shot during the 2018 Great March of Return, and we will link to his. We referenced it in the interview, but another reminder doesn't hurt. The GLIA project is working to provide medicine right now and medical supplies to the people in Gaza. So if you would like to check that out, folks, it's going to be down below.
A couple of words from our sponsors. As you know, there have been massive cuts to foreign aid. I think it was the Lancet magazine anticipated that over the next 4 or 5 years, close to 14 million people may die because of the absence of that aid that the U.S. was providing. GiveWell doesn't claim to have all the answers, but over the last 18 years, the nonprofit research organization has helped guide more than 130,000 donors and $2.5 billion to highly cost-effective aid. GiveWell's researchers are analyzing the impact of cuts to U.S. aid in real time and sharing what they're learning with everyone for free through research updates, grant write-ups, and candid podcast conversations. GiveWell has already committed tens of millions of dollars in response to this year's cuts, and their researchers are working to forecast, find, and fund other new cost-effective needs. I have used GiveWell in the past many, many times to find all sorts of charities. They basically do extensive research on what the most effective charities are. They recommend, I think, anywhere from 1 to 10 charities, depending on the year. It shifts year to year, but all of their research is completely transparent. They also have a vertical with everything they've ever gotten wrong. It's a great outfit. Anything you donate through there or they take a no cut. The whole thing is donor supported. It is a really helpful site if you want your dollars to be most effective when you're giving charity, and they're doing a lot of analysis of the implications of USAID. For trusted, evidence-backed insights into this evolving situation and information about how you can help, follow along at givewell.org/USAID. We'll put that link in the podcast and YouTube description. Also, your summer glow starts from within, and no, it doesn't require an injection. Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet is proven to deliver real results through deep cellular rejuvenation. What kind of results? Fat loss, a metabolic reset, radiant skin that's going to have you looking your best and feeling confident all summer long. Prolon is a plant-based nutrition program featuring soups, snacks, and beverages designed to nourish the body while keeping it in a fasting state, triggering cellular rejuvenation and renewal. Next generation, or the next gen program they have, builds on the original Prolon with 100% organic soups and teas, a richer taste, and ready-to-eat meals. Developed over decades at USC's Longevity Institute, backed by top U.S. medical centers, Prolon has been shown to support biological age reduction, metabolic health, skin appearance, fat loss, and energy. I did this about a year and a half ago, and really interested in the longevity aspects of it. You're supposed to do it a couple of times a year to do it, and I was nervous going in, but I found it was much easier than I thought. And as soon as I get like a extended vacation from my son, I'm going to do it because he would torture me with it. But it's my energy was up, And apparently by the time you get like day 4 and 5, your body moves into a completely different state where you do get that cellular rejuvenation. I don't know why I can't say that word. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new next gen at special savings. Prolon's offering you 15% off site-wide plus $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day nutrition program. Just visit prolonlife.com/majority. That's PROLONLIFE.com/majority to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/majority. Again, we'll put that in the podcast and YouTube description. And then also this program is sponsored by, honestly, one of my favorite products. It's Blue Land. I've been on a personal mission to get as little sort of unreusable plastic out of my house and not bring it into the house, more importantly. That means no more huge jugs of laundry detergent, no more huge jugs of dishwasher detergent, no more plastic containers of hand soap, no more toilet bowl cleaner stuff. I've gone Blue Land on all those products. Cleaning, also the cleaning sprays. I'm talking, your everything spray, your all-purpose cleaner, I guess, your window cleaner, your bathroom cleaner, all of it is now Blue Land in my house. One of the things that got me really worried was all the those packets for your laundry, your dishwasher.
Oh yeah, with
covered in plastic. Where does that plastic go?
Yeah.
Some of it may end up on your plates. The rest gets washed into the ocean, and we've got literally islands of plastic. That's why I made the switch to Blue Land again across all the cleaning products in my house. Blue Land was named an EPA Safer Choice Partner of the Year. Cleaning sprays, toilet bowl, dishwasher, laundry. Blue Land's formulas are 100% microplastic free, made with certified clean ingredients, free from chlorine bleach and harsh chemicals, safe to use around my family, my cats, my dog. He's over, all the plants in the house, and all of it a really effective clean. Honestly, check it out. And the refills, I'm saving money too. You get a one-time purchase of those 3 different bottles for all your spray things. They send you the tins for your laundry, for your toilet bowl cleaner,
really
little
cute
tablets
tins, too.
for hand soap. I mean, the whole thing. Check it out. Blue Land has a special offer for listeners right now. Get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/majority. You don't want to miss this. Blueland.com/majority, 15% off. That's blueland.com/majority. Get 15% off. When you get that 15% off, go deep because it's very easy to store this stuff because it all comes in little tablets, and it's a big savings long term. All right, quick break. When we come back, our interview with Dr. Tarek Loubani. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Dr. Tarek Loubani, Canadian emergency room physician. He runs the GLIA project, which seeks to provide medical supplies to impoverished locations and has been stationed in Gaza for at least a year now. I know that you spoke with Emma. You're now in Nasser Hospital near Khan Yunis. Why don't we start with that? What has changed over the past year?
Yeah, a lot has changed here over the past year. I've been in Gaza this time for the past 2.5 months, so not quite a year. But even getting in was incredibly challenging because the Israelis, of course, will prevent anybody from entering and have been constantly banning any international medical groups or any medical groups at all from entry. Since we spoke, Glia has been banned by the Israelis for reasons unknown, and only through some Herculean diplomatic efforts were we and the 6 other organizations that were banned with us allowed back in. So what's changed in the past year? All of the Palestinians who I see are more impoverished. There are, of course, many more people killed, and everybody is starving. Over the past year, almost everybody that I've met has been forced out of their homes at least once, some of them 2, 3, 4 times. And the amount of food that has been coming in has progressively dwindled to the point that now, when I see patients, almost everybody is starving. Really, truly, every patient who I see, I can clearly make out their spine. I can make out their scapula, their shoulder blades. I can see how much weight they've lost, the skin that's hanging off of them that shows me what they used to look like before the war. It has been grinding, it has been painful, and it has been progressive. And of course, as you know, it's all been driven by this depraved, almost maniacal Israeli policy of making sure that Palestinians can't live.
When you talk about the starvation, can you explain from your perspective as a physician what starvation does to the human body, especially once you get to a certain point where it's difficult to reverse it, even if nutrition was going to be provided immediately?
Yeah, you know, I've had a good look on starvation for quite a while. I myself have been on several hunger strikes, especially when I had been previously jailed. I've followed people on hunger strikes. I've seen people in famines. And this true, and of course in Palestine has been the subject of restriction of food for many years. Dov Weisglass in, I think it was 2007, was an advisor to then Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and started what he called the Gaza diet, which was a caloric restriction program that made sure that Palestinians didn't have enough literal calories. They literally counted how many calories were allowed into Gaza and made sure that there weren't enough for every Palestinian. But all of these programs, they allowed still for the fact that Palestinians could do their own thing. And so actually one of the biggest reasons why there's a famine right now isn't the cutting off of aid, but rather the complete razing of almost all agricultural lands. Something to the effect of 98% of all agricultural lands have either been heavily damaged or completely razed. So when Palestinians were able to obtain a measure of self-sustainability, that self-sustainability was taken when their lands were literally bulldozed, and when anybody who went to try to replant the land was killed and shot, as though they were some kind of, freedom fighter. Like they were just trying to raise, some animals, some simple animals, or to plant some simple crops. Even now, in the midst of the starvation, almost the only food that is here is food that has been grown by Palestinians for everybody. In terms of what it does to the body, I mean, I can describe to you some of the scenes. I'm not a pediatrician, but because I'm not a pediatrician, because this is not the thing that I see the most, I decided to go to one of the malnutrition wards. And of course, the malnutrition ward is based in the pediatric hospital because the people who are the most impacted by malnutrition are the kids. Malnutrition and these famines, they impact the weakest people in society. And so when I first got to Gaza 2.5 months ago, what I was seeing were the old people, were the people who had pre-existing medical problems, the young kids. They were the ones who were dying of malnutrition and who looked like they were clearly suffering. And they looked just like you imagine out of the textbooks, Emma. Like they really did look like skin and bones, barely surviving. And I remember the first little girl who I saw, less than a year old, I believe she was about 8 months old, and her father had brought her in because he thought that we could do something to help her. And she was dead. He put her on the table in front of us, And I looked at her and realized, like, oh my God, this little girl has died because they couldn't feed her. And I asked him some questions, half because it was my job medically, half just out of curiosity about how exactly this happened. And of course, for her, since the beginning of the war, she had had very little access. There was no formula available. The formula that was available was incredibly expensive and so out of reach for the family. And when they came to the hospital, the little formula that they were given as part of the hospital treatment was simply not enough. They took lentils, which at the time was the only thing available, was some lentils, and they mixed it with water and tried to give that to her as a kind of formula. That doesn't work. It didn't work. She died. And I realized looking at her, she was 8 months old. She looked like she was 3 or 4 months old, and she had a weight that was about as much as what a little newborn baby would have. In that specific case, before we could even say too much to the family, a mass casualty started, and they were off to the morgue, while we dealt with all these other Palestinians. But every single Palestinian who I see at this point, their body looks emaciated. Like I described to you, you can see clearly the bones going through the skin. You can see clearly the impacts. At this point, the people who are severely malnourished, they will die. They will all die. That is thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. And that's not because it's impossible to fix their problem. That's because Israel will not allow us the materials and the supplies that we need to fix their problem. And so even when Israel did start allowing supplies in, like they have over the past week, for example, yesterday, I ate a little piece of meat for the first time in 3 months, a little piece of meat. Now that those supplies have started coming in, they're still not enough. It's still too little. We are receiving, by caloric count, 60% of the population's needs. And so even though we're now eating, we're eating, most of us, 1 meal a day. And the people who are starving, they need massive numbers of calories. But not only that, they need nutritious calories. I can't just give them rice, which is what's available. I can't just give them lentils, which is what's available. Or yesterday, what arrived, some kidney beans. I need to give them highly nutritious foods that include vegetables, that include greens, that include vitamins, things like that. And that's why the people who are so deeply malnourished are going to die.
And my understanding is it's sort of just the severity is creeping up the sort of the spectrum or across the spectrum of healthy people, right? I mean, like almost any other dynamic, I would imagine, the more vulnerable you are health-wise in the best of times, the more susceptible you are to succumbing to this. What do you have any sense that the Israelis are claiming that food supplies are being intercepted. Do you have any sense of that? Is there any talk of food supplies being intercepted, or rather just simply it's just not coming?
I think it's very clear. Firstly, we have to start, anytime we say about anything about an Israeli statement, that has to be prefaced with the Israelis are war criminals and serial liars. They lie basically about everything, including, yesterday their pronouncements about these journalists who were killed. The Israelis are war criminals and liars. In this specific case, let's expand upon how they're lying. They're lying in two ways. The first way is that there isn't enough food coming in. The whole premise of food being looted and diverted is the fact that there simply isn't enough food for people. And so it creates a dynamic where people can sometimes compete for the food. If there was an orderly way in which food could be given to people, then that simply wouldn't exist. So yes, there is some food being looted, but the primary reason for that is because the food is not sufficient. However, here's another question. Where is the food being looted? Where are these things happening? They're almost universally happening in what are called red zones, areas that the Israelis themselves protect and enforce. And the people who are doing the looting are people who are Israeli sponsored. They are gangs like the gang of Abu Shabab. They are groups of people who are literally under the protection of the Israelis. And anytime Palestinians, whether it be Palestinian families, Palestinian police, which do exist, or the Palestinian citizenry, anytime that they fight these gangs, what they find, and I've literally seen this when one of these gangs attacked the hospital about a month and a half ago, is that the Israelis quadcopters show up, the Israelis drones show up and start fighting in terms of protecting their goons and killing anybody who's trying to bring order back to the situation.
So you've seen that. You've experienced being under attack at Nasser Hospital, and Israeli military support, basically these drones coming in and fighting alongside one of these gangs. And I don't know that people have a full awareness of Hamas exists in the context of Gaza, but there are competing gangs that, particularly now, and we see this whenever you destroy the infrastructure of a country, competing gangs start to rise, and some are being supported actively by Israel as a way, ostensibly, of, I guess, fighting against Hamas, but also as surrogates for Israeli forces.
Yeah, let me paint you a picture of the attack on Nasser that happened in June. So the first thing to say is that attack, the last attack, the one that I'm going to describe, was the sixth attack on Nasser that primarily were Israeli-led. These ones included Palestinian gangs, but they were primarily Israeli-led within a 3-month span. We're not talking about something that rarely happens. The Israelis attack Nasser and other hospitals regularly. Yesterday, they destroyed a good portion of the emergency department while they were assassinating journalists. So the Israelis attack Palestinian hospitals regularly. The way in which this happened was that we are in these accommodations for international doctors and healthcare workers that are relatively high up in the hospital. And all of a sudden, it was like all hell broke loose, shooting everywhere by all manner of heavy weaponry and light weaponry. And so, of course, we all bunkered down, went to the ground, and being an emergency doctor, and this having been the third attack on the hospital, I knew that I needed to get to the emergency. So I ran down to the emergency department where these gangs were trying to break into the hospital, shooting at anybody who they could. They killed, I think, 4 or 5 people in the hospital within the 2 days before. That was a third attack in 3 days. And we, of course, took our patients to the ground. And I remember this one little girl who was there with a chest tube and her family around her because there had been a bombing. She caught some shrapnel, some obviously Israeli bombing shrapnel that had gone into her chest. So we put a chest tube to drain some of the blood that had accumulated around her lung. And so we put her to the ground. She was 6 or 7, of course, terrified. And her family around her were terrified too. And we just sat there while these gangs sort of attacked. And one of the things that was unique and different was that we heard the quadcopters that were protecting them and pinging off anybody who was around, who was firing back, or who was trying to protect the hospital. And then finally, there was a drone strike just before the Palestinian police were able to repel the gang. Of course, the responsibility was taken by Yasser Abu Shabab in a Facebook post. Like, we're not speculating about who did this. And Yasser Abu Shabab said, yes, we were supported by the Israelis because we are doing the right thing. You know, that's what he said in his Facebook post. He took down the Facebook post, I think, when his handlers realized how damning that post was, but they took full responsibility for it. I want to just sort of pull back to what this is from. The Israelis are interested in deep chaos in Palestine. Palestine is not a chaotic society. Palestine is a very highly ordered society, and people know how to self-organize. I was amazed the first time that I went to one of these refugee camps with tents. The tents were almost like put by a laser line. You know, they were all lined up. There were no tents out of line. There were little streets. People were organizing the tents, providing supplies, making sure that the very little that was available to everyone. There is no disorder by nature in Palestinians or Palestinian society, or I would argue among anybody anywhere. In disasters, we usually see people self-organize and are very good to each other. So Israel keeps trying to stoke these flames of civil unrest among the Palestinians and the different factions.
What entities end up protecting the hospital from these assaults at this point?
It's the Palestinian police. So the Palestinian police still exist. They have to basically be relatively undercover, but they're around. And obviously, like any other police, some of them have light weapons like guns or some light assault rifles. And they are the ones who everybody, regardless of faction, is hoping are going to be able to protect us when these guys show up. When the gang showed up that first day, the first of the 3 days, and started killing people, executing people in the emergency, all of us, regardless of faction, regardless of creed or belief, we're all hoping that the police would be there to protect us, that the security of the hospital would be there to protect us. So yeah, it's the Palestinian police. There's also one other main faction that your audience might have heard of, which is called the Arrow Unit. The Arrow Unit is a kind of internal protection unit that tries to put down these types of disorders, that has targeted Abu Shabab, that has killed members of Abu Shabab. Yesterday, for example, by Nasser Hospital, some members of the Arrow Unit had brought a stolen truck that was loaded with flour that had been stolen by one of the gangs and just left it at the gates of the hospital so that people could take anything that they wanted of the flour. And, nobody sees them. I don't know what they look like. Nobody knows what they look like. They show up, they disappear. And when people ask, how did this truck get here? It was obvious that it was the Arrow Unit. But other than the Arrow Unit, which is, technically a subdivision of the resistance, the Palestinian resistance, which at this point is a combined operation between all of the armed factions, it's just the simple Palestinian police, a civilian force that is answerable to whatever democratic forces still exist within the society.
What do you know about how many hospitals are actually functioning at this point through the Strip?
Yeah, we have to take a very, very liberal view of what the word functioning means. So imagine, what it looks like to have a hospital that works. You've probably been to hospital at some point for yourself or for a loved one. And there are certain expectations. Like, for example, you expect that your doctor is being paid. Well, salaries are very rare here, very difficult to come by. You expect that your doctor probably was able to sleep the night. Well, almost all, if not all of the medical staff that I worked with yesterday, I worked in a shift yesterday that was 24 hours, almost all of them are sleeping in tents, if not all of them. You expect that they're fed. Well, doctors are literally passing out on the floor sometimes because they're so underfed. We're eating what the population is eating. And so for literally over a month, the most that I used to get was a literal handful of rice or of lentils. And I wanna know, I am an international. I literally have access to the most of everything. And still that's the food that we were receiving. We were receiving the same food as everybody else, which was provided out of whatever aid. So when we say that the hospital is functioning, we're talking about an absolutely Sisyphean effort that Palestinians put in which they show up despite losing their family members, despite themselves sometimes being wounded, despite not having anything or definitely not enough to eat, and despite none of us having equipment to eat. And I have so many stories of times that I saw patients and wished that there was something that I could do for them, that there was something more that could happen for them. Patients who were so eminently treatable, and I couldn't treat them because of a lack of supplies. Every day, it's like a surprise what exactly we're going to be lacking on that particular day. Yesterday was glove day. There were just no gloves. And so that meant that, again, I would wear one glove. Obviously, they sometimes come in packs of two when they're not in boxes. And so I would wear one glove try to deal with the patient as much as I could. That was the glove that I dealt with the patient with as much as possible. And then just wash the other one when it got full of blood. Another day, it was gauze day, simply no gauze. Medications are almost 80% at severe shortage and 50% stock out, zero supply. Have you ever had a pain medication? Because in Gaza, you can't. Have you ever needed some kind of intravenous antibiotic? Because almost all of them are out in Gaza. Yes, they are functioning, but they're functioning despite these severe lacks, and really by the most liberal definition. There's Nasser, the hospital I'm at. It is the best functioning. And then the other main hospital is Deir al-Balah, Al-Aqsa Hospital, and then the last one is Shifa Hospital. That's it.
There's these smaller, just indignities that I also think don't get spoken about fully. Like there was a piece, I'm forgetting which paper it was in, but about there's no menstrual products for women and girls, and people who are pregnant are also incredibly vulnerable. Can you speak a little bit about pregnancies and what life is like for the creation of life in the Gaza Strip amongst these horrific conditions?
There is quite literally nothing more hopeful to me than to see a little baby in these environments. And any baby who is born despite this tremendous hardship that happens. Of course, there's no contraceptive products here. So it's not like really there are many options. And like you said, there's no menstrual products. The only, we brought Glia just about a month ago, brought in a bunch of reusable menstrual products. And that's the best that we can do. But most women who I see when they're on their period, when I see them in the hospital, have usually torn up t-shirts that they're using as makeshift menstrual products. So there is a severe shortage of basically anything like that. And, speaking of people who need things, of course, there's a trans population in Gaza who are on all kinds of hormonal products that are also not available. So the shortages are severe and are drastic. When a baby is born, the first thing that we try to do is to feed the mother as much as possible. Families, you see entire extended families pouring their resources and sacrificing their food for the mother so that the mother can produce breast milk. If the mother doesn't produce breast milk, there is a good chance that child is going to die, because Israel does not allow baby formula into Gaza. And as I say the words out loud, it really hits me hard, because we're talking about baby formula. We as an organization brought in some baby formula in one of the bags and were able to get it in. And when we presented it to the Ministry of Health, it was like Christmas for them, because there just isn't enough. There was another doctor who tried to enter a couple of weeks ago, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and all of his baby formula was identified and taken. They saw it on the x-ray, and so they took it. And I won't discuss how we got our formula in, but suffice it to say, we learned some of the lessons from how they identified his formula and made some adjustments. So just think about this for a second. We're smuggling in baby formula like it's cocaine. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And so if a child has to be on baby formula, they will be malnourished, because mothers have to water down the baby formula. They have to not give enough. They're trying their best to keep these children alive until either they can start taking in any kind of solid nutrition or until the situation changes. Now, in terms of what it looks like, in terms of dealing with babies, we see pregnant women who are the victims of bombings all the time. And I remember this one woman where she'd come in, the woman was dead, very, very dead. And the first thing we do when we see a woman that late term is we ask, when did she die? They said, well, it's only been about 5 minutes. So we put the ultrasound and saw this baby scrambling in there, but with a good heart rate. And it was obvious that this baby was going to die unless we did something. And so then the question began, do we have a little ventilator for the baby? And we didn't. Do we have the equipment to take this baby out? It's called a perimortem cesarean section. And we didn't. And so me, the other doctor, senior doctor at the moment, and the junior doctors, we stood around this woman, and I had this knife in my hand. I was ready to go on this cut. And all we could really think is, to what? I think if we were even in a Gaza of 6 months ago, that baby would have been treatable. But on this particular day, we knew that if we tried to cut this baby out, we had no medicine to give it, no nutrition to give it, no, there's a special medication for the lungs that helps them operate in those first days when they're not yet ready to be born. We had none of that to give it. We had nothing. And so we watched with our ultrasound on this dead mother's belly, as that child's heart wound its way down and as its fight gave way to just death.
And you had said how much has changed, or we were speaking briefly before since, we last spoke, because in many ways, of course, the genocide is ongoing, but I even see it, Dr. Loubani, in you, that you've lost some weight, right? I mean, it's different than when we last spoke. The level of suffering over the past year, if you could just put that into context, because you also previously had been doing work in the Gaza Strip, and before the active genocide began, you were shot in the peaceful Great March of Return in 2018. So you have a good sense of how the suffering has escalated, just a big picture view from your perspective.
I think probably the best way to describe the big picture is my trips to the morgue. We end up with so many bodies in the resuscitation part of the emergency department that often I can't do medicine. I have to turn into somebody who literally carries bodies, because some of these people, their entire families, that there's nobody to take them. Usually the people who take people to the morgue are their families. And sometimes the entire family is executed in one of these assassination operations or in one of these tent massacres. And so I start taking people over. And occasionally, as I'm taking people over, somebody will look over at the body, ask me about it, or say something. And a year ago, when somebody died, there's always a deep mourning. Palestinian society is a society of life that also sort of venerates both its living and its dead. And people would have this sadness that somebody had died. Now, when somebody dies, you see that there's a kind of relief that most people say, God has now shown this person mercy. God has given them mercy to take them out of this fresh hell. And that's truly how it is. You noted that I've lost weight. Yeah, I've lost weight. Yeah, I haven't felt what it's like to have a full tummy in 3 months. It's a personally devastating experience, but it's a reflection of the fact that for 4 months, 5 months now, nothing has come into Gaza. And Gaza was cut off just as Ramadan began, which is a special kind of torture. That's a time of real celebration for Palestinians and for Muslims. And so they have suffered so tremendously over the past year that for all of us, when somebody dies, of course, there is a mourning, but then there's also like that little bit of God has now ended this person's suffering once and for all. Now may they see paradise. I was never really a deeply religious person, but I can't but wish and hope for a paradise, because the hell in which these people live before they show up to me in my emergency department, it's unbearable. It's unbearable. I see them, especially the kids. The little kids are, of course, the hardest thing for all of us. As you mentioned, I've seen a lot of wars, and I see a lot of men, a lot of women who've been shot, who've been bombed, who've been killed. And I've seen a lot of children too, but it's never felt like the war was against children, and almost as though everybody else who gets killed is on the side. collateral damage as though the whole thing's for kids. For example, today, 7 children were killed in Gaza in what it really has to have been described as a targeting of just this house of kids. Schools have been targeted, shelters have been targeted. So the biggest change that I've seen in the past year is that people, despite staying strong, are in a spiritual sense, being broken piece by piece by the hunger, by the depravity, and by the feeling that, I can't help but share, that nobody out there cares enough to stop this.
Dr. Lubani, is there any, obviously, political pressure on the government, our government that's supporting this, beyond that, in terms of aid? Are there vehicles that you would recommend if folks want to try and help? Are there, or is it a day-by-day thing in terms of where to help? Obviously, none of this is even remotely close to sufficient, and we need Israel to allow for more aid to come in. But from your perspective, is there anything that we can do, or is it just simply people should share these stories?
Sam, one of the statements that you said, I kind of want to pick on for a moment. You said we need Israel to allow the aid to come in. Israel is a depraved criminal society running a war crime writ large, mass large, and a genocide. They will not allow aid to come in. They will be forced to allow aid in. That, I think, can happen. And so we must force Israel to stand aside while aid goes in. We must force Israel to stand aside while Palestinians rebuild their agriculture. And we must force Israel into a ceasefire. Now, in terms of what you and your audience can do, probably by this point, everybody watching this show has been to a protest. We know the protests work. The protests work in a way that's probably, excuse me, the protests work in a way that's probably a little bit different, in the sense that, excuse me, in the sense that we are not strong enough to beat back our governments in a single go. But the fact that we have been persistent over now 2 years, just shy of 2 years, it means that the governments have been forced to listen and forced to take heed and forced to change their actions. And so governments have changed the way that they're approaching things. Governments have done things differently. That's because of the persistence of your viewers and people like them who keep protesting. That's political attrition. There's also a kind of economic attrition that at our level has been driven by the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, and at other levels have been driven by people like the Yemenis with direct boycotts and direct interception of the Israeli economy. And so that economic attrition is also really important. And of course, the last thing to stop this, perhaps the most important, is military attrition. Military attrition is what's happening on the battlefield. It's changing the way in which Israel is running this genocide, and it's stopping them from rolling into Gaza City or into other cities. For example, when they took Rafah, they were able to do it because the resistance wasn't able to stop them, but the resistance was able to stop them in Khan Yunis. They surrounded Nasser hospital over the past 2 months. All of Nasser has been surrounded in a red zone, with it being the single exception, and it was the resistance that stopped the Israelis from progressing to where they wanted to. So those three, political, economic, and military attrition, are what's going to stop this. And people have to think about how they can plug into one of those three and do the maximum that they can. Are we succeeding? Yeah, to some extent. Do we need to do more? Absolutely.
Last question, and this is probably beyond the scale of something that you can fully speak to, but I would still love to ask you, because we get these death toll numbers in the United States that feel like these wild undercounts, and the level of carnage that you're talking about here does not match the numbers that are printed in the Western press. Could you just shed some light on that dynamic and why there is such a lag, and what your assessment is of the true reality based on what you know?
I loved your description. The numbers are a wild undercount. That's perfect. I can tell you, for example, about malnutrition. So I work within the Ministry of Health system, right? We as what are called emergency medical teams, international doctors and nurses and allied health professionals, we go in solidarity with medical teams. And so we sort of follow their lead in terms of how they do things. And so when I document what the cause of death is for somebody, everybody receives a piece of paper that says how they died. What our directive is that if there's anything other than simple malnutrition that's causing this death, don't write it down as a malnutrition case. You can write it as secondary or tertiary, but don't write that this person died from malnutrition. Similarly, Palestinians do not count the dead unless they have been to a hospital. So, for example, there have been many aid massacres, which, by the way, is another kind of depravity we haven't even touched upon. And so when the aid massacres have been happening, there are many bodies that people tell me, lots of my patients will tell me there are bodies stranded there that we couldn't get to. We don't count those dead. We don't count them even really as more than missing, because we don't know for 100% sure that that person is dead. Like, look at the lists the Palestinians release. They release only the bodies they can identify with the ID numbers attached to them. Of course, it's a wild undercount. Think of how many people are under the rubble, how many people are still in red zones, how many people are thrown around laying dead in the sun in various parts, including at GHF sites, this Gaza Humanitarian, so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites. Of course, it's a wild undercount. Really credible organizations that have done these counts for other places like Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo estimate the number at this point to be 5 to 6 times more easily. That's 300,000 people who are very likely dead. And of course, there's another concept in medicine called excess deaths. So for example, I've seen numerous number of people, for example, dialysis patients. I saw a dialysis patient who we worked on yesterday for a number of hours who ended up dying. In our count, that person died of a kidney-related cause, but obviously that person was malnourished. They couldn't receive dialysis care the way they were supposed to. They were killed by Israel. They were killed by the occupation. But we don't count those as direct conflict-related deaths.
Dr. Tarek Loubani, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for the work you're doing there. Don't obviously, I don't know what to say. It's sort of speechless what people are going through there, and what you're having to deal with. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I mean, the last thing to say is Palestinians are staying strong. Your audience should stay strong. And we should just keep working at this till it stops. Thank you.
Absolutely. And the GLIA project, we'll put a link to that down below, wherever people are listening to or watching this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Let's put a link to Emma's interview with Dr. Lubani in this podcast and YouTube description. Just visually, it's pretty dramatic, but it's also worth sort of like seeing what he was talking about. I guess it was a year
and a half
ago.
And he had been trying to get back into Gaza at that time period, and it was just one of the, if not the most memorable interview I've ever done, and it just struck me how desperately he wanted to get back in, and the heroism of that, knowing what you're going to endure as well. And he is, Canadian, but of Palestinian descent, and still not being protected here.
That does it for the free show today. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, but you also get the fun half, which is sometimes fun. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Matt, Left Reckoning.
Yeah, Left Reckoning, we had a bit of a coup at the DSA convention. Well, just actually that we were being in Chicago, not really related to the convention, but two of the state reps that are fleeing the state to break quorum, Ana Maria Rodriguez Ramos and Jean Wu, sat down with David for 40 minutes and talking about the fight to stop the gerrymander and also what Democrats need to do to build back credibility with folks who didn't believe them when they were warning everybody that Trump's lying about what he's saying during the campaign trail. So really happy to have sat down with them and check that out. That's going to be right after this show. We're going to premiere it. So just stick around and we'll raid from Twitch too. So really great interview there.
All right, quick break and fun half.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false. No, I'm sorry. Women's...
Stop talking for a second. Now let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But